Now, the leader of Tanzania's main opposition party, CHADEMA, Tundu Lissu, is on trial for treason after calling for electoral reforms ahead of the country's general elections in October. He has denied all allegations, while his party, which is the main opposition party in Tanzania, has already been disqualified from participating in upcoming elections, adding to concerns about political freedom in the country. Now, the trial has drawn attention from across the region, with Kenyan and Ugandan activists trying to attend in support, but being blocked, detained, or even deported by Tanzanian authorities. Now, President Samia Suluhu Hassan's government has actually warned outsiders to stay out of the country's internal affairs, but many are watching closely to see what this means for democracy in Tanzania. Today, I'm joined by two gentlemen, Dr. Nicodemus Minde, a researcher, Institute of Security Studies in Nairobi, Kenya, and also Evans Rubara, Pan-Africanist and policy engagement professional in Dar es Salaam, North Tanzania. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the conversation. All right, so let me begin with Dr. Minde. Now, Dr. Minde, Tanzania is often praised for its stability in the region, but people are now saying that this stability has come at a cost of political freedoms. What exactly is going on in the country?
Well, I think this is a continuation of a lot of democratic backsliding over the years. Of course, the last regime under President Magufuli, there was a serious clampdown on opposition and a lot of clamping of individual freedoms, political freedoms, as well as civil rights. And of course, when the new president came in 2021, she brought in a number of reforms for about 2 years until 2022, 2023, when now there was a backtracking of this reform. So that is the context at which the country is at right now.
All right, so let's hear from you as well, Evans. Can you go ahead and tell us, what exactly is happening in Tanzania, if you can hear me, and also how tolerant do you think the government is for dissent and political opposition?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this discussion. I would say that I personally, and I believe that the Tanzanian masses have been taken aback. President Samia Suluhu, when she took over the mantle of leadership in this country, she appeared to be a God-fearing person, a person who really wanted to return things back to a situation where human rights were actually upheld and human dignity was actually also respected. Unfortunately, as time has gone by, we see a regression of such principles, and the promises that were there, I think, she took over from a polarized nation in post-Magufuli leadership, and there was hope. But the promises of democratic reforms have largely unraveled with systematic obstruction faced by CHADEMA particularly, and I believe that there is a lot to be desired, and there is a lot of embarrassment among Tanzanians.
Okay. Now let's come back to you, Dr. Minde. Evans did say, the president came in as a God-fearing person. And we know that the ruling party, CCM, has actually been in power since Tanzania's independence. And when President Samia came into power, she came with promises of reform and also openness. Have we seen those promises fulfilled at all?
Well, in the first 2 years of her presidency, to be honest, a lot was done in terms of initiating these reforms. In fact, she came up with a philosophy called the 4R, which included, among other things, reform, reconciliation, rebuilding, and resilience, which again really endeared her to the country after 6 years of terrible rule under the former President Magufuli. And then we saw that she was able to really make attempts to woo the opposition in terms of having a conversation, a dialogue around issues to do with reform, and of course healing a deeply divided country. So there was a lot that was done, but again, with time, and again, as the elections were approaching, as they continue to approach, we saw a number of backtracking on these initial reforms. One will ask why we have seen this backtracking of these reforms. One, maybe it's because the country is approaching an election, and of course, there is the fear and apprehension that this ruling party could lose its either majority or its long-term dominance in the country. So we saw periodic or systematic reversal of most of these reforms, which again others had seen it as mostly cosmetic type of reform. So that is the context through which we are operating at the moment.
Dr. Minde said, Tanzania went from a lot being done as regards reforms and promises from the president, and also, to backtracking of some of these reforms. Do you agree? Do you agree that there were actually some of the promises that she made have been fulfilled? Hello, Evans. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think that we are standing at a political space right now in Tanzania where we really don't know whether what the president said initially, she meant it. And we are actually put on crossroads because when she came in, her slogan, the slogan within her leadership is, let the work continue. So let the work continue could actually mean that let the kind of the regime that was there before, the principles that late President Magufuli actually led Tanzania by, should continue. And when we say that, has anything changed? Well, at least there is something that has changed. And one thing that has changed is that, and gladly so, Tanzania has seen a huge growth in terms of women taking up into leadership positions. But also one would have hoped that if there were any changes that align to those 4 R's, then the inflation that we are experiencing right now would not be here. Just the other day, I was looking at the statistics about on the presidents whose terms actually attracted a lot of, foreign loans. And in her regime, I believe that Tanzanians are actually facing a much harder life than it was when Magufuli was there. Because when Magufuli was in power, even though Magufuli had a lot of problems in terms of upholding the democratic structures and principles of governance, but at least we could actually say that even fuel prices went down significantly. And we saw also that the infrastructure within the country also went up. Now, I know that in a number of areas, there are reports of having schools built, having hospitals built. Yes, we could have hospital buildings, we could have, school buildings, but do we get quality services from those schools? Do we get quality services from those hospitals which are being built? And now, with all these changes that have taken place, one would ask, is she a wolf in a sheep's clothing?
That's quite a big question. Now, coming back to you, Dr. Minde, with the main opposition party, that's CHADEMA, barred from elections and also its leader on trial, what are the implications, or what implications does this have for the democratic process and also political pluralism in Tanzania?
Well, it's a sad moment for the country in terms of the general electoral trends and the democracy. If the main opposition figure in an election is facing treason charges, And as you have said, the main opposition party also been disbarred from participating in the elections. But again, there's also precedence to this. Last year, there were local government elections in which the ruling party won 99% of the vote. And of course, the local government elections are usually seen as a precursor to what is going to happen in the election year. So, in terms of the electoral and democracy outlook, for sure, the country is in a very bad shape. The hope among civil society and those that are pushing for reforms and democratic ideals is that more international pressure should be put so that we can be able to see the return of some form of normalcy in terms of parties participating in an election. And of course, these dubious charges that have been actually been placed on the main opposition guy, Tundu Lissu, be removed so that they can be able to participate in the election. But be it as it may, you can just see this a general democratic backslide. And of course, this is also emblematic of a region that actually is in turmoil in terms of the democratic trends, be it in Kenya, be it in Tanzania, in Uganda. We are facing a serious democratic backsliding, which is quite worrying.
Quite worrying indeed. Now, back to you, Evans, and still on this same question. Do you believe, looking at, the fact that the main opposition party has been barred from elections, do you believe that Tanzanian governance today reflects democratic values, or are we seeing a drift towards a one-party state in all but name?
Well, I do call it electoral manipulation. There is no time in point in the history of Tanzania where you saw the Electoral Commission interfering with the registration of a political party. And the fact that the National Electoral Commission has actually disqualified CHADEMA from the October 2025 elections for refusing to sign controversial electoral code is a complete breach. Now, what does this mean? I mean, in Tanzania, there has been a lot of regressive steps. And one is that obviously elections in Tanzania since 2015, or let's be more specific, 2020, has not been fair and free. And there were cases where you go to vie for a representation in a region, and you go with your wife and your family members who are definitely going to vote for you, and then you go back home and you're told that you didn't even get one vote. Even your own vote was not counted on you and for you. But also we have seen that the other organs of governance in Tanzania, leave alone the Electoral Commission, even the judiciary, even though I'm not a lawyer, but I would say that there is a point where when things are not going well in a country, another arm of governance in a country, such as the judiciary, could actually intervene. We see that the judiciary, the Electoral Commission of Tanzania, do not have what I would term as the precipice of being the arms of governance, which has some sort of oversight on democracy, good governance, and human rights in the country.
Okay, now let's talk about, the Electoral Commission. Let's move this to Dr. Minde. How transparent and accountable is Tanzania's Electoral Commission at the moment, with all being said and done? Who ultimately controls its decisions?
The mantra of the main opposition party, CHADEMA, their main call is to reform the entire electoral system. And in fact, this actually is the cause of the treason charges, which have been interpreted as treasonous, because simply the main opposition party is calling for reforms of this electoral system and electoral governance architecture, which, to be honest, even if you are to participate in such a system, you can never compete with the ruling party, because the electoral system is quite flawed. It is controlled by the main opposition, by the main ruling party, in terms of its appointment of electoral officials, not just at the top levels, or this, I'm talking about the chairperson, the director of elections, but at the constituency level, the management of these elections are actually done by cadres of the ruling party. These are called district executive directors. And, the previous President Magufuli, actually had one time commented that how would he pay these government officials and then go ahead and declare an opposition has won a seat. So you can understand the depth of which the electoral system is flawed. And of course, this is at one level. The next level, of course, in Tanzanian electoral governance and electoral architecture, you cannot contest the presidential election. I think this is one of a kind. Many democratic countries, if there's a feeling that the electoral process or the elections were not free and fair, the losers or the opponents can go and challenge the results in a court of law. Tanzania does not have this provision. So you can understand the call by the main opposition party, CHADEMA, calling for no reforms, no elections, because they really want to have a debate so that they can be able to really actually not just reform, but to just really overhaul the entire electoral process, because as it stands, there is no chance that there can be any fair competition in an election that we can term as democratic, free, fair, and credible.
All right. Now, I still want you to tell us, Evans, how flawed, to what extent, the flaws of the electoral system is, but would also want for you to speak on the prominent regional activists, that were barred or even detained at the border, including Kenya's ex-Justice Minister Martha Karua. What message does this send about Tanzania's openness to international scrutiny and solidarity?
I think that Dr. Minde has actually talked a little bit more about the flawed nature of the Electoral Commission in Tanzania. I believe that they are flawed to an extent that they do not have a voice. They do not know what their role is in terms of even, when CHADEMA went out and is demanding for reforms, it means that the CHADEMA is actually calling for a peaceful electoral processes. And when the responsible agency at the national level does not even know what their role is, does not even realize that the call for reforms within the agency itself to be able to even oversee this important process that we are actually going towards in the next few months, then obviously you're dealing with a person who is completely assimilated to the ruling party's whims, and then they have nowhere to go. They are flawed to a point where one only could think about one thing, that they think about their salaries, they think about their comforts, they think about their children, they do not think about the national tranquility. They do not think about Tanzania as a country that has a history that has been enshrined in what we call the harbor of peace discourses. And when NEC cannot actually do what they're supposed to do, then what do we see? We see chaos, because even when, if people can actually get injured, others can actually face their own death, meet their own death just by going to the court in Kisutu to witness or just to listen to the case. That's a problem. So that is how far they are flawed. They do not know what their role is in this country. Now,
all right.
Sadly,
I sincerely apologize, but I think we really need to find time to speak on this. Hopefully, by next week, we will definitely call both of you back, to be able to speak in extent, on this, because we really have to go at the moment. Thank you so much, Dr. Nicodemus Minde, researcher, Institute of Security Studies, and also Evans Rubara, Pan-Africanist and policy engagement professional, for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much.